Is there a trick that you've always used to prep yourself to be in front of the camera or in front of the radio? Because you can mess up.
Oh, for sure. As we record this, I'm going to be emceeing an event tomorrow morning, and I can almost guarantee I'll mess something up. So I just embrace that.
Yeah.
But for me, Blue, the key is in terms of whether I was calling a game or doing a studio pre and post game host gig or any number of things, to me, it's always about the preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So the preparation gave me confidence that things were going to go well, with the full knowledge that it is a business with human beings and technology, and things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how you respond when, kind of the blank hits the fan, right?
Yeah. Welcome back to the Blue Stiley Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with someone whose voice you've probably heard if you've ever tuned into Root Sports Northwest, longtime broadcaster Tom Glasgow. From the Seahawks to the Mariners, Tom has spent over 40 years behind the mic, bringing some of the biggest sports moments to life. In this conversation, we dive into what the journey has looked like, the pressure of live TV, the value of preparation, and what it really means to stay authentic in a world that constantly wants you to perform. Tom is full of wisdom, humor, and honesty. Basically, a fountain of knowledge. Whether you're chasing a dream, shifting gears, or just trying to figure out what's next, this one's going to be for you. All right, folks, enough from me. Let's get to the man himself. Take it away, Tom.
Let's go deeper into my lack of music knowledge and poor taste.
That's right. Oh, I'm on that one with you. I love that. All right. Well, everybody, welcome. The voice that you're about to hear is somebody that many of the Northwest sports fans have always heard, and it's usually while people are yelling at their TV monitor. So, Tom Glasgow, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Blue, I appreciate the invite. This is awesome.
Well, you and I ran into each other because you brought me in as a speaker for CEO to CEO,
Yep.
and over in Bellevue and in Spokane. And anyone that I talk to that has any Northwest connections, they all know who you are. And you've been a part of those people's lives in their living rooms. And do you ever get recognized all the time? Like,
I don't know. I wouldn't say all the time.
It's your voice?
More often than not, it's the voice.
Yeah.
People hear, my career, which I'm now in my 45th year since I really got into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
More than half of that has been on the radio side,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of TV as well. But I'd say most of the time people are like, oh, I know. Are you, it's that kind of thing. But
are you the Cairo guy? Or are you a big sky guy?
Yeah, look, I got to deal with the paparazzi all the time, but somehow I've managed that. No, so it's nice enough that it happens where you can actually, you meet people and have some fun conversations about what's going on in town, whether it's the Hawks, we're going to get the Sonics back. What about, Mariners? Oh, should they have pulled anyway? Those are great experiences.
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm sure when Taylor walks into a restaurant with Jason Kelsey, and they don't get a minute of privacy. So it's good. It's all good.
Well, I'm assuming that you get that all the time. Like when people do talk to you, they want to know what they want to express their feelings of a game or like what the gossip is. And I'm sure you've heard some. Are you ever in tune of like what's going to happen prior to things being announced? Like when the Sonics left, did you know right before or little things like that? Are you ever privy to something on the sports world before everybody else knows? Yeah,
I'll give you one. And this is, I still find this somewhat amazing. I forget the exact year it happened, and by product of age, 90 or 91. Everybody knows what happened with Magic Johnson when he was announced he was quitting basketball because he tested HIV positive. So that happened later in that particular afternoon. I got a call in my office that day around 2:00. I still won't reveal the name of the source because he's still around, and so I won't do that. He goes, Tom, the Lakers are going to have a press conference today. Magic Johnson's going to announce his retirement from the NBA. And I'm like, okay. Now, what did you really call for?
Yeah.
And he goes, Tom, I'm serious. He goes, and he's HIV positive, and that's why he's quitting. So, now, I knew who this guy was, a very trusted source. He told me who he had got the news from, and it came directly from the NBA office, okay? So I immediately go to my news director. Now, this is all happening in LA.
Yeah.
I'm in Seattle, and I'm like, what do you want to do with this? Should we do anything with this?
Yeah, or is it private?
Because if you're wrong or off for a little bit, you have a major issue.
Sure.
So long story short, we didn't go with it. But I knew before most of the world that this thing was going to go down, and it was stunning. Another funny story. Magic Johnson, by the way, is one of my favorite athletes ever.
Okay. I actually met him in Bellevue, and he was doing a gala event, and I was actually one of the models at the event. So,
I just find him to be a great guy, and he's done so much post basketball that I think is so worthy of admiration. The other story is we had a nighttime talk show host in Seattle by the name of Wayne Cody, Mound to Sound, about 5'9", 5'10", 325 pounds. One of the most entertaining people in broadcasting that you would ever meet. So Wayne's doing his show from 7 to 9. I produced his show. So while the show was on, I was back in the office kind of monitoring things. Phone rings in our office, and it's a guy calling me, and he goes, "Hey, I refuel private jets at Boeing Field." And he goes, "John Elway is on one of the jets I'm refueling right now, and he just told me he got traded from the Colts to the Broncos, and they're having a press conference tonight, and he's on his way to Denver." This is a major story.
Sure.
If people don't recall the John Elway story, and I get it if you don't, he was drafted by the then Baltimore Colts. He's like, "I'm never playing for Baltimore. I'll go play baseball for the Yankees. I'm done." So he was playing hardball with the Colts. The Colts finally relented and made this trade with Baltimore. So I tell Wayne, I go, "Hang on." I put the guy on hold. "Wayne, I got this guy on the phone." Da-da-da. He goes, "Let's put that guy on the phone." So I put this random guy on who refuels jets. He goes on our talk show, tells the same story to Wayne that he told me. Wayne goes, now this is pre-cell phone.
Sure.
Pre-cell phone. Wayne goes, "Hey, why don't you go see if you can get," this is on the air, "why don't you go see if you can get Elway to get off the jet and come to the phone so we can interview him?" The guy goes, "Okay, Wayne, hold on." So Wayne, we've got.
And you're not FaceTiming or anything like that.
We're not FaceTiming. This is straight up phone, landline.
Yeah.
And the guy comes back about a minute later. He goes, "Oh, Wayne," he says he can't do the interview. So anyway, we knew well before anybody else that John Elway had been traded to the Broncos. Obviously, that changed the scope of that franchise. Major news in the NFL. So those are a couple of interesting ones.
Oh, that's got to feel kind of cool.
Yeah, it was fun stuff.
But I mean, you've had the opportunity to interview so many athletes and owners and executives, and I'm sure that there are these times. Have you always been a sports fan?
So yes. I mean, my sports fandom really kind of exploded. I was probably 10 years old. I grew up in Tacoma. My first loves were the Seattle Supersonics, Lenny Wilkens, and basketball in general. I also loved the Tacoma Cubs AAA baseball team at the time. When I got home at school, I sat on the front porch because I was waiting for the Tacoma News Tribune to get delivered so I could get right to the sports page and dive in. And sports for me was a tremendous escape, whether it was following it or I played everything, loved it. So I was passionate about it. So yeah, I mean, as long as I can remember, I loved sports. And again, let me date myself. My first memory of watching a major game on television was Super Bowl III, which was the New York, believe it or not, the New York Jets actually played in the Super Bowl one time. And upset the Baltimore Colts in this really famous game. But yeah, ever since then, I have loved it. And then sort of look, like a lot of kids, I'm going to be a pro athlete when I grow up. And then I hit high school and wow, there's a lot of guys who are better athletes than me. But I also had a real interest in journalism. So that love of sports and love of journalism seemed like a really natural thing to kind of mesh. And so I knew before I went to college, in high school, that I wanted to get into broadcasting.
Sure.
So that was never in doubt for me in terms of what I had hoped to do.
Okay. And so you get into broadcasting right out of college, basically, and you're immediately put into, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of times when you step on stage or there's a microphone in front of you or a TV camera in front of you, I'm sure that you have had some errors occur or things have happened. Like, how did you gain the confidence? Was it just over time and that it's experiences? Like, what was it that you were like, man, that really there was something inside of you that you were just like, you felt more comfortable in front of the camera? Is there a trick that you've always used to prep yourself to be in front of the camera or in front of the radio? Because you can mess up.
Oh, for sure. As we record this, I'm going to be emceeing an event tomorrow morning, and I can almost guarantee I'll mess something up. So I just embrace that.
Yeah.
But for me, Blue, the key is in terms of whether I was calling a game or doing a studio pre and post game host gig or any number of things, to me, it's always about the preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So the preparation gave me confidence that things were going to go well, with the full knowledge that it is a business with human beings and technology, and things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how you respond when, kind of the blank hits the fan, right?
Yeah.
And look, I think starting when I was in college, first of all, the first time I was ever on air, I was 9 years old, and my grandmother had me call in to it was called Radio Garage Sale in Fairbanks, Alaska, because she had an electric meat grinder she wanted to sell. And I still have the tape.
Do you really?
And my voice is still as high as it was back then. So anyway, but I don't know if that triggered anything, but.
Were you always told that you had a soft voice, like a nice...
I guess to some degree. I personally don't like listening to myself or watching myself. I've just never really enjoyed that for me. I kind of feel like once I've done something, it's done and I'll let it go. Now, I will watch your podcast.
Oh, I love you.
I will watch this and listen to this.
That
is a
I love it. I love it. Maybe your voice doesn't sound as high behind this microphone or not. Have you seen the SNL with Alec Baldwin when he goes in for the job interview and he gets the job, he lands it, and they bring him into the room and they say, "Hey, you're set to go. All you have to do is record your voice."
Yeah.
And so he goes, "Okay, no problem." He's all excited being this like the new manager, and he records his voice and he goes, "Hi, I'm Alex Johnson, and this manager, leave a message." And then he listens to it and he goes, "Hi, I'm Alex Johnson." And he goes, "What on earth?" And he does it several times, trying to sound even more manly.
I can relate to that a little bit. That's how I hear it.
Well, you don't sound like that to me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I took us off track, but
First time you had this track with your grandma put you on with the meat grinder.
Yeah, so that was my sort of first experience when I was in high school, and in college I got a little gig where I'd go to high school football games on Friday nights and do little reports. I'd phone into a local radio station, and they'd be like, "Let's go to Tom Glasgow out at Lincoln Bowl where Mount Tahoma's playing the Lincoln Abes and get an update on that game." And then I'd have a little 30-second thing. So I'd send it in. It was usually recorded. I'd send that report in, then I'd run to my car and turn the radio on so I then could hear myself, because that was a really cool thing.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, back to your original point in terms of stuff going wrong and bloopers, and oh my God, I've got a long list of those things. So, but you hope you minimize them. Some are great. I mean, some of my bloopers, I actually love them. They're funny. I mean, it made people laugh.
Yeah.
I'll give you the one that I was, as I did my last few minutes on Como Radio in 2019, my co-host played this as it's been great working with you. And, sometimes and I was co-hosting news at the time, in addition to sports, there are times you just have to rip and read and cold read your copyright.
Sure.
You don't get to proof it. So we were doing a story. On all of these items that had been confiscated by security at SeaTac. Obviously guns and knives and this and that. So I'm reading this thing.
The best of the best.
Right. And then I'm, I'm reading the story. Among the items that security confiscated, guns, swords, an inoperable hand grenade. And I said, crotchet needles. Because I was just reading it as it was written. And my anchor just starts dying. A gal named Elisa Jaffe, love her to death. And she goes, Tom, I think you meant to say crochet needles. And then I lost it because I just realized what an idiot I sounded like. So full disclosure.
Well, we're going to go with crotchet needles today.
My family goes with crotchet needles.
Oh, my God.
They bring that up all the time. If I make a misstatement around the house, they're like, yeah, right. Crotchet needles? You're the guy? So anyway.
Oh, I love that, because that reminds me of being in high school, and I was taking a vocabulary class, and we were all given the list, and it was going around, and you could tell how many kids were in the class. So you're like, okay, I'm the 8th word, come down. And all of a sudden I get to it and I'm reading, I go, fox pass. And everybody's like, no, that's faux pas. And I'm like, oh, Okay, right. Like,
Yeah.
oops.
Yeah.
But I'll always remember that word,
Right.
right? And it just sticks in my mind, but
Yeah.
it made everybody else's day.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
100%.
Well, speaking of people who make your day in your life, like you're sitting on the field sometimes, you're up in the booth sometimes, and you're looking at all of these people going through the highs and lows. What have you learned from watching people experience like the highest high to the lowest low? What has that taught you to stay calm in your life and just realize that maybe it's just a game, or it's showing you how to do something in your work or in your life better based off of what you're seeing on the field all the time?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think the initial takeaway to that is stay in the moment. It's so important to stay in the moment. On our drive over from Seattle today, we were talking about 2014 NFC Championship game. Seahawks are at home against the Green Bay Packers. It's a horrible first half for the Seahawks. Russell Wilson has thrown 4 interceptions. They can't get anything done. The Packers are clearly on their way to the Super Bowl. I'm covering the game. I'm working the game. They're toast. And then in the second half, it's like, all hell breaks loose, right?
Mhm.
It's a fake field goal touchdown. It's an onside kick recovered. It's a kind of a Hail Mary 2-point conversion pass. It's Marshawn Lynch being Marshawn Lynch, and then it's into overtime, and they win the game on a touchdown pass to Jermaine Kearse. And
Great memory, by the way.
well, when you're there, it's hard to forget it,
Sure.
right? It was just so stunning. It was one of the most epic games I'd ever seen in person or on television, and the stakes were so high. It was a trip to the Super Bowl, and for the Seahawks, a chance to win back-to-back and make history. But what was key to that, they stayed in the moment. It's just about next play, next play, next play. And so like when I'm doing a show,
Mhm.
and much of what I've done over the years is, look, when you're doing play-by-play, it's basically unscripted, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, people might assume you're working off a teleprompter on a pre and post game show. And sometimes you are, but a lot of times you're not. You just have your rundown, the show starts, and you just start talking. So what helps me, a takeaway in that is, I don't look at the full show.
Mhm.
I don't look at the half hour we have to do or the hour we have to do. I look at the next segment we have to do, and the next story we have to do, or the next graphic we have to. And I just try to stay always in that moment.
Mhm.
And I think that is the best way to sort of get through things. And look, I love being unscripted versus scripted. I've read off a prompter plenty of times.
Sure.
But I just like sitting down with my analyst and just talking about the game we just saw or the game coming up. We do have structure to it. A lot of times we've done a rehearsal, which looks, by the way, rehearsals look nothing like what you see on the air, but it just gives you a feel and a sense of what you want to do. So, yeah, I think there's definitely
like a
a
little
lesson to
practice.
be learned. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think seeing what, the great athletes stay in the moment. That's why Pete Carroll would talk about every week as a championship game or championship week, because he never wanted those actual championship games to get too big,
Mhm.
right? So a game against a winless team in week 4 is no different how he preached it as a playoff game with really high stakes. And it was just sort of like training that approach, staying in the moment and doing that thing.
Well, and getting used to it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
And
Yeah.
getting those reps in.
Reps are huge.
Now I'm not talking about in the gym,
Yeah.
but it's that practice over
Yeah.
and over. And one of our previous guests, Chad Thompson, he came on and he's a soccer coach, and he was talking about how the high school team had lost the first half or the first quarter, and they were just like, they were horrible. And then they came out and they stopped them from scoring a goal, right? Like the number 1 team. And it was a whole new mindset after the halftime,
Yeah.
because all it took was, hey, this it's a whole new game now.
Yeah.
And yes, you lost the first one, but if you were to start from here, we would have won because we actually scored a goal and they didn't, right? And it's just like, it's your mindset.
Right. It's totally true. And look, is it different at a professional level? Millions of dollars are on the line, or at the college level where there's lots of money on the line as well, versus high school or playing youth sports, which unfortunately has gotten to be quite monetized, I think, to the detriment, first and foremost, to kids. But fundamentally, when you watch a Super Bowl and you're watching a bunch of millionaires play the game, that money means nothing. It means nothing to them. That's not why they play. Michael Jordan didn't become maybe the greatest basketball player ever because he was driven by the money. The money was the byproduct. For Tom Brady, the money was the byproduct. And to me, how you define an athlete, and great, like there are Bradys, there are Jordans, there are Mickey Mantles or all these people. But they're not, the greats aren't driven by the money. And I think how you measure any athlete, star or not, is, are they maximizing what they have? Are they getting the best out of who they are? And if somebody does that, but they're not a star, I don't think you can criticize them. I think you have to admire them. Hey, they made themselves the best player that they are able to be. So
I love that. But that taps into like Rudy, right? Like Rudy obviously wasn't the star.
Yeah.
And he was just barely good enough, but he gave his heart every time, like when he got out there. And that's what made him stand out and make the team.
Yeah. Well, it's what I think. Look, I love the concept of team is really important to me.
Yeah.
Like I love teams, but not always great teams, but teams that persevere. What I love about broadcasting is it is so team dependent. You might see two people on air, but it's the producer, the director, the assistant director, the editor, the tape guys, the replay guys, audio. I mean, it's a long camera people. It's a long list. And if anybody really screws up their job, it impacts everybody else.
Yeah.
And one of the great things I loved at all the places I worked, but in particular, most recently at Root was, it's one of the things that drove me, and I think it was the culture in that building, which I think is a great one, whether it's sports related or business related, is you were so driven not to let your teammates down.
Love that.
Right? Because I know the effort that they put into it. And when you're the on-air person, you're sort of the last line of defense, right? Everybody up to that point has kind of done their job. So you feel a responsibility to present that in the best way possible, which doesn't mean you're always going to do it perfectly, but you're going to always hopefully do it professionally.
Sure.
And but that's what I loved about the businesses. We all bought into that culture of not only just wanting to do our best work for ourselves, but we really wanted to do it as a way, I think, to honor the really great
the people
work
that you're working with too,
that they were doing.
Absolutely.
So that's how I viewed it.
Well, and that kind of dives into collaboration and building that trust with your team, right? Because they depend on you and you depend on them. And so it's in all of these things that you've done, you're dependent on your director and the photographer, the videographer, and you're all helping this. All of the tides are rising up, right? And you're helping each other move along. But has there ever been a point where you did mess up and someone told you something like, it's okay? Like, was there a mentor in your coming up that said, Tom, you've got this, it's okay? Like, did you ever doubt yourself when you let the team down? How did someone help you pick yourself up, or did you do that personally?
Yeah. Look, I don't think you have a successful career in any field unless you are given opportunity and set up for success. So I'll try to give you an example of that. So my first job, I really started as an intern at Cairo Radio and TV in Seattle. It was great because the building had the radio station.
Everything was there.
Everything was there. And I had 2 weeks here and 2 weeks there, right? And somehow I impressed the sports director at the time on the radio side, Pete Gross. And Pete was the original voice of the Seahawks. And they were in the process of creating this sports producer job that they'd never had. So I was in the right place at the right time. Pete had been exposed to me. I got the job. Fast forward to 2 years. Now I'm not on air at this point, right? I'm behind the scenes. I'm producing. Fast forward 2 years. The weekend sports position to be on air opens up. Like, I want it. Of course I want it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just going to be given to me. And in the end, it wasn't given to me. It was given to somebody else. It was given to a terrific guy named Steve Thomas. Steve at the time was doing football and basketball play-by-play on the radio for PLU, which is where I went to school. So when Steve got the job that I really wanted, I went for the job that Steve left to take that job I really wanted. And I got that job. My point to the story is Pete knew me. Pete liked me. I liked Pete. I had ultimate respect for the man. He was my mentor above all other mentors. But he knew not to set me up for failure. And he knew I wasn't ready.
Oh, wow.
And so we talked about it. Tom, you need to work on your inflections here, and you need to do this, you need to do that. And not long after that, other opportunities came about at the station. And I was ready, or at least more ready at that time. So he set me up for success. But you don't get anywhere. I mean, I've just had so many people have my back. Like this is my 45th year. I've been on the beach 3 times. Okay.
Uh-huh.
If you're in broadcasting long enough, you will get let go for any number of reasons. So just real quick, the first time I got laid off, I'd been at Cairo for 14 years. There's new ownership of the company. I walk into a meeting. I think it's going to be like a 10-minute meeting. I'm just going to kind of redo my contract, probably a modest bump, annual salary. I'm in and out the door in 10 minutes. I walk in, sit down. This GM I do not know. He said, we're not renewing your contract. That direct, that cold, and I was shocked. And I had to
a little bedside manner.
And I'm like, okay. He goes, you can either quit today, you can leave today, or you can work for the next 4 to 5 months until your replacement shows up.
Ouch.
So that's a difficult situation to be in, right? Because you're like, well, you kind of want to go like you guys.
Yeah.
But I had a 3-year-old at home.
Yeah.
And so I needed to make that money and then also at the same time try to find that next thing.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, I'll stay. But that was a tough one. The second time I was at Root at the time, it wasn't Root then, it was called Fox Sports Net Northwest, post 9/11. The whole economics of the business changed. I was one of like 3 anchors that were told, really like you, but you got to go. Mm-hmm. We're not making money. And then the third time was 2019 at Como, out of the blue. And again, it was, we have budget issues and we can let you go and someone who's already on staff can take your job and we save money. So for those negative, each time I had one of those negative things, there was somebody or something or a combination of the two that was not too far down the way. Mm-hmm. So that was huge. And so I just attribute a lot of my success to, people having your back, knowing your work, thinking you'd be a good teammate. Mm-hmm. So it's, in the end, it's worked out.
Well, and believing in you, right?
Yeah.
And trusting in your ability and knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And you mentioned that, like, sure. Pete knew that you weren't ready yet. So this would be a better landing for you here. So you can get those reps in.
Well, for sure. And that play-by-play job I got at PLU on a 5,000-watt radio station. I was making $25 a game. And if there were more than 50 people listening to any given game, I'm not exaggerating.
Were you getting bonus?
There were additional grandparents who were probably listening to see how their grandkids were doing. I mean, it wasn't about exposure. It was just about the opportunity to talk for 3 hours once or twice a week. Twice a week if we're doing basketball, once a week if it's football season. That was the best thing that I could have had that early in my career. And starting in radio is such a bonus in terms of then transitioning over to television, because you get into so many situations where you have to ad lib, you have to be unscripted.
Like an
Tom, we need
style.
You to fill 2 minutes because that tape we were going to play, it's jammed in the machine. So you just, it's just a great, and I'm not saying don't perceive radio as a training ground for television. I'm just saying there's some great things about what radio teaches you that is really valuable on the television side.
Well, speaking of value about being on the radio, you're this trusted voice and you're also this trusted personality on camera. How did you gain, or how do you believe that you gained the trust of the audience? Like, how is it that people kept coming back year after year and believed in you and knew what you could bring to the radio or to the television?
Well, I appreciate that. I hope they did. I think for the most part.
I got lots of notes in my feedback that said that you're not actually very well trusted. But
people don't like you.
Well, you obviously you are.
Look, it takes time.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen people who've built up credibility over literally decades and make one awful, terrible mistake.
Yeah.
And
comes crashing down.
So I think credibility is something that it can only be built up over time. I think it helped me. Look, I'm so fortunate that I've spent my entire career in this business in one market, and it's a really good market. And for what I do in sports, it's a phenomenal market. Like, that's a blessing. And I've never taken that for granted. I've always felt very fortunate. So I think because I've been in the market for so long, people know me. And or at least feel like they know me well enough, right? And so I think that's just how you get that credibility part down. We were, it's interesting, back in 2000, Fox Sports was developing this new concept, of which Fox Sports Net Northwest, now Root, was part of, where they were going to do regional, for lack of a better description, regional versions of ESPN Sports Center. Sure. Right. And they I feel like I have a hair on my face. They way overpromised what that was going to be, and it backfired on them. But we had a consultant come in, and the consultant said, for this type of show, here's what you need to do. You need to be an over-the-top homer. You need to be like on air and cheering.
Like a Simpsons homer?
Not like
like a home run homer.
I'm a fan whose objectivity is blinded by my love for the team.
Okay.
Right. So impartiality is like out the door, and honesty. We don't want your honesty. We don't want you to. Every call against your team is a bad call.
Yeah.
One of those things. And I told the guy, I go, look, I've been in this at that time. I'm like, I've been in this market for 20 years. That will not ring true with anybody watching me. They'll call BS on it.
Your bluff, right?
They're going to call it. This is phony. It's an act. Well, that's what you need to do. So that was that was probably my most uncomfortable period in broadcasting, when this thing was trying to launch and what was going on. So I attempted to give them enough to kind of keep them off my back.
Yeah.
While at the same time maintaining who I am and was. So, in the end, I don't know that it worked. They really didn't like that answer, but that's how it goes.
But that's staying true to your personality and who you are.
Yeah, I just thought it would backfire.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell if someone's hopefully at least mostly genuine, right? Yeah. Mostly honest, or hopefully more than that. But I just knew it would be.
You have that face that's not trustworthy already. Like, I'm looking at your voice is awful, and it's this
terrible
face.
So I mean, it was not a good play on their part, and that whole thing nationally just blew up within a couple of years. It did not work, and that was one of the reasons why. I remember they had all the anchors flown down to L.A., right, to talk about how we're going to do this concept. And they talked about, you've got to cheer for your home teams, right? And a guy from Chicago raises his hand. He goes, I have a question for you. Am I a Cubs fan or am I a White Sox fan? And someone from LA is like, am I a USC fan or a UCLA fan? Yeah. So they exposed immediately the major flaw in the concept. Yeah. So,
oh my God. And you wouldn't understand the difference between a rivalry. Because I mean, as a sports fan, I collected baseball cards like my whole younger childhood career, and it's just funny because we would go to professional games, and one of my biggest things was to always buy one of the jerseys at like a baseball field, right? And I stopped doing that out once I realized how expensive it was to do that every single time to buy an authentic jersey. But I never have felt out of place as much as I was in Chicago. Because when I showed up in Chicago, I didn't have any Cubby wear. And I was like, it was all Cub fans.
Yeah.
And then later in the day, there was not a doubleheader, but another game for the Sox. And so I went down to the Sox Stadium, and it was the same thing. And it was amazing because in Seattle, everybody's just a Mariner fan. Right. Like everybody's just a Mariner fan, and you can show up in your Yankees uniform if you want to, and if they're playing the Yankees or the Red Sox. And it's like, but for a town that is really has a rivalry. It is amazing to see that camaraderie come together. So I can understand that.
First of all, I'm jealous because I grew up a bit of a Cubs fan again because they're
Ryan Sandberg was from here, from
here.
Spokane.
Their AAA affiliate was in Tacoma. So a lot of guys that played in Tacoma ended up playing for the Chicago Cubs. And I've never been to Wrigley Field. I desperately want to get to Wrigley. Never been to Fenway. So there's some bucket list places, but that's one of them. So good for you for getting to the Windy City.
Yeah, I used to work. I used to work there. I still work there, but I used to model there extensively, and it was like I had friends there, and I would always hit as many games as I could, and it was one of the greatest experiences.
That's awesome.
And then my childhood best friend was a huge Cubs fan, and so it was for his 30th. I took him to Chicago, and we went to I think 5 games in total, including the Sox on that game. But it was just like it is an experience, and then I believe that Fenway is the same way.
Yeah.
Right? And I just like that feeling is just, so have you been to Fenway?
I have not been to Fenway.
Well, those are 2 things you need to remedy.
Yeah. Old Yankee Stadium.
Yep.
I mean, the one prior to this incarnation, 2000 Mariners were in the American League Championship Series. Cool. There's a lot of places I haven't been. So I got to get on it because I'm running out of time. I got to go.
Well, you're 45 based off of everything you're talking about here. What I was worried about, but you did bring up Mickey Mantle. So I'm like, oh, man.
I had to throw that out for the older demographic in your audience. I didn't go back to Satchel Paige or, Wee Willie Keeler. But
oh my God, Blue River wasn't he one of the guys?
Maybe I like that.
Blue Edwards. It was Blue Edwards.
And there was different Vita Blue,
Blue Edwards, and Vita Blue. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's so funny. Well, you are okay. So you've gained the trust of the audience, and you're obviously rewarded with that with multi Emmy-winning nominations and awards, right? So, is that validation that you had always like, once you got one, was it like something like, hey, I'm pretty good at my job?
Yeah.
Like, what is it that kept you going other than your love for sports and you being really good at the job? Was there something that kept you driving besides being able to put food on the table for your 3-year-old at the time? But is there something that just, this is your love and this is your passion?
You're really good at these questions. So I have 3, and I say, I'm going to use I in quotations, 3 Emmys. The great thing about those Emmys is it wasn't a Tom Glasgow Emmy. It was for the team members 2 were for Kraken pregame, Seattle Kraken pregame shows, which meant a lot to me because hockey came to me later in my career. And the last one was for a Seattle Mariners pregame show. So, whether it was 10 or 12 people, we all received our trophies. They're very cool to have. I get the biggest kick out of them when friends come over to the house and they get to look at them and hold them. They're not as big as like the Emmys. These are Northwest Regional Emmy Awards. The cool thing about those for me is I won those over the last 3 years. So the latter stages of my career. So that was a cool thing. In terms of did it validate? I'd be lying if I said it wasn't cool to have those. It's great. Again, it's fun. It's neat. It's and again, especially the timing of it. To me, the validation of my career, I think, is the duration and the fact that I was in the same market for all those years. So in terms of, I guess, a need to feel validated. Look, the key for me to be in this thing as long as I've been in it is I feel like I'm trying to remember the line.
Dos Equis man?
No, I wish I was Dos Equis. In fact, I'd take a Dos Equis right now.
Here's cool water,
versatility. Right? Like I always feel like I can do a lot of things. Maybe I'm not a master of any of them, but I can do pretty much anything you ask me to do. I've done a lot of different play-by-plays, some better than others. Like I did one volleyball game on the radio, and I only did one, and I never wanted to do another one. It was a disaster. Every gal on the court, and it was an NCAA tournament matchup. Why do they all have blonde ponytails, and their names aren't on their jerseys, and I'm trying to figure out who they are?
Yeah.
So that was a one-off. But I just think the versatility to do play-by-play, to do radio, to do TV, to do news when I did news, to do studio, to do conventional 11 o'clock, 3-minute sports cast on your affiliate that you watch. That was the key to me. So I'm proud of that. And I tell kids, because I'll talk to a lot of kids who are in college, and the business is getting a lot tougher and it's getting a lot smaller.
Well, you had already talked about that downsizing and going into the room, and it's like, well, there's budgets,
Yeah.
and I mean, newspapers, for
Yeah.
example, are a perfect example. Like, there's not a giant room or building dedicated to the newspapers anymore. It's maybe a few offices.
Well, we have our phones, right?
Yeah.
We can get everything when we want it. We don't have to wait till the 11 o'clock news. But more is being asked of people in the business now, and fewer people are in the business. Salaries have contracted. I'm not trying to paint a bleak picture, but it's not as robust as what it was. And we know why, because of the technology and how things have changed and how people watch what they want to watch. So I'll tell these kids, the more you can do, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to be more employable. Like, hey, Jim, I know you want to do sports. You're only going to do sports. You've got to have that sports job as your first job. I'm like, look, your most important thing is to become a great communicator. And what if they offer you a job where it's news and they want you to be a reporter, but they don't have anything for you in sports right now? Are you going to say no? Think about it. You might want to take it, because you might be in there for 6 months and the sports guy decides he's going to go to a better market, and that job opens and you're there. And they know you and they like you and they've seen your work and you work hard and you're always on time. And so that's the advice I give them, to try to survive and have a longer career in the business, because it's a tough one. It is tough. There are not a lot of jobs, right? Whether it's the Spokane market, Seattle market, any market, it's not like, well, I just got laid off or I got let go. Well, there's 13 job openings in what I do. Usually there aren't any job openings in what you do. It can be really tight and tough. So
if you were to tell someone, like, what are a few ways that you have worked on your communication skills, whether that be in front of the TV camera or be in front of a mic, what are things that you have done to improve your communication skills?
I'll tell you, I probably need to do a better job in my just one-on-one.
He's nervous, everybody. He's sweating right now.
No. Look, I think you can always get better. And you talk about repetition. But I also said, I don't like to listen to myself or watch myself, which doesn't mean I never do.
Sure.
So I think it's always good once in a while to sort of refresh yourself, watch, see if you can fall into some really sloppy habits of repeating words just because they just...
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you heard somebody do a scoreboard update and it's Miami beat Denver, New York beat Boston? They're using beat every time, right? Instead of, outlast,
conquered,
overcome, whatever.
right.
But just like you can fall into some habits that you don't. I can't even tell you how many times things may have been pointed out to me like that in the past, especially earlier in my career. And I'm like, really? I said that?
Yeah.
And you go back and go, like, I did. I didn't even hear it. So the key, I think, for me is to always become a better listener. Listening is so key into what we do. How many times do you watch an interview, whether it's a news interview, general interest sports, the question is asked, the answer is given, and you're like, oh, I know what the follow-up is going to be. And it's something else.
Yes.
And the obvious is missed. That is really unfortunate. We're on this great podcast that you do. I love the Smartless podcast. Jason Bateman.
Yeah, all three guys.
All those guys, right? But one of my frustrations in listening to their podcast is they have these incredible guests. And these guests something really golden will come out of their mouth. And because they're always trying to one-up each other, they miss it.
Well, because they're not actively listening.
They're not actively listening.
Yes.
They're performing.
Yeah.
And they miss like, oh, I wanted you to go deeper on that because it was important. So for me, the best thing I can do in terms of constantly trying to improve my communication is I think I need to become a better listener, always. And I'd like to think I'm better than I was 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but...
Well, you obviously are, because you're winning more
far
Emmys,
from
right?
Perfect. Well, who knows? But yeah, I mean, who knows? Look, I have 3. I have 2 daughters and my wife. Excuse me again. So when I head to that great press box in the sky, they'll each get 1.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, a legacy. You're handing down the legacy of the award.
And they can do whatever they want to do with it, hold the door open, serve hot dogs on and stick the hot dogs on, whatever, that's all up to them. So.
Oh, I love that because, I mean, you're hitting on the actively listening, and it's so important to have those conversations. And it's something that I'm working on too. And as a communicator, because it's my job to talk and to hear, and sometimes I'm not listening well enough. And it's like when you watch a movie and you're watching, and you're like, oh, this is the follow up. This is what's going to happen, and it goes a different direction. I hate the movie then. Like I'm like, oh, you should have done it this way.
Yeah.
You should have done it this way. And I think that we can be our own worst enemy sometimes when we listen, and we don't want to hear ourselves talk sometimes. Like, oh, I don't want to do that. But it really reveals a lot of nuggets. Yeah. I do notice that with the podcast, because it's not live, I have to listen through it, and I listen to her intros, and I listen for these short videos and these nuggets that I really want to clip and take, and like what the benefit of that was, or what the highlight was, just like you do in sports, like in sports. But when I listen to it, I'm like, I said like 17 times in a matter of like five paragraphs. I said from the stage 13 times. And until you're called out on it, you don't really realize that you're saying that. And so it's important to not only get the reps in, but to get the correct reps in. Yeah. And to fix them when you can.
For sure. I mean, guilty as charged. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly. I live it.
Well, and it burns too when you it is hard to watch the tape, right? Your back tapes. Have you ever,
can I say this real quick though? But oftentimes, whether you're doing, and you do a phenomenal job on stage and live events, you bring this great energy. That's what people remember. They remember the message and the energy. I think what we do, or maybe you're like me, man, I am my harshest critic. Yeah. I am harder on myself than anyone else will ever be, which is why I don't like to watch or listen as much. But you're working against a clock. You got to get that next thing in. Oftentimes you're doing live sports. I've got a IFB in my ear. I've got someone talking to me as I'm talking.
Sure.
I'm trying to comprehend what they're saying. I've got to be out in 45 seconds. Do I have time for that one last question, or should I do the follow-up? But they said I do have to ask that. So sometimes, look, the example I use with the Smartless podcast is not because I'm trying to, crack those guys over the head. There are oftentimes factors that an audience may not be aware of that can make it difficult. That said, working on listening is a key thing for me.
Well, and keeping it conversational, because if I am actively listening and I'm caring about what you're saying, it really does make my mind move. And it's like sometimes we can always look at the tape another time and say, oh, I should have done this. And that will make me better for the next time. It will prep me to get better reps in. But when I'm listening to myself and I'm listening to someone else speak, if I don't actively listen, I will miss those cues. Yeah. I will miss that nugget that reveals itself, that it's like, ooh, I can't expect you to go deeper every time. I have to be able to pull that out of you as well as an interviewer.
Yeah. Well, look, this whole genre of podcasting, I think it's one of the beauties of it is because you do have much more time than maybe what you would see on television. A long story in TV throughout the years going, on the affiliates in Seattle, and it's really everywhere, is like a long story is a minute and a half.
Yeah.
If you're really lucky, you might get 3 minutes if you're doing a feature on somebody. Wow.
3 minutes.
There's an art. There's an art to it that I never mastered. So I think that's why podcasts are so great. Is you can dig deeper into things. You don't have to check the clock literally like every 30 seconds, like where are we? And you don't have somebody jumping in your ear telling you got to shut up. And hey, you forgot to ask that. So it's a cool format. I think it's a great thing to do.
How have you controlled a conversation when you interview someone? Like if someone's a talker, how do you bring them back to the question that you initially asked? Or how do you lead them like, okay, it's time to be done with this answer. It should have ended 7 minutes ago, even though you only at 3. Like, how do you control someone that you're speaking to or you're talking with?
So you do have people where, if you interview subjects that you might see regularly, that you ask them one question and it might be 2 or 3 minutes. And then there are other people that are going to be really difficult, really challenging. So again, to me, it's about knowing that person. If you've had previous experience, anticipating you're not going to get a lot. How do you ask the question? Are you setting them up where the answer could be yes or no, and they feel pretty good about it, but you feel pretty bad about it because you need something deeper? So you have to look, I always, if given the opportunity, I always tried to have a conversation with the person before we ever started recording, to just talk about, before we were talking a lot about music before we started this, right? And that was fun, and that was great, and that was cool. So I would try to do how, just as simple as like,
He loves
hey, how
Earth,
many?
Wind, and Fire.
I
FYI.
do love them. Eagles, Earth, Wind, and Fire, 1, 2, depends on the day. But that I always thought was a great way to put that person at ease, and also give me an opportunity. If, let's say I've got someone I know is long-winded, to say, hey, I've only got 3 minutes, and I want to get through like 5 of these questions. So just so you know, if I have to jump in on you, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to get these other things.
Oh, that's great.
So I'll prep them that way.
Yeah.
And if it's someone who's not as chatty, you just try to warm them up in that conversation so they feel relaxed. I think oftentimes, especially athletes, they're either just genuinely shy in front of a microphone or a camera or both. They might be a little mistrusting of the media. They might be a little concerned that if something comes out imperfectly, it makes
what they're going to look like.
It'll make them look bad.
Yeah.
So I try to, negate as much of that as I can in those situations where you do have an opportunity to do that. If you're in a chaotic locker room post game, you just got to go for it. You just got to find a guy who's available, get there, get through all the other people, and do your thing. So it depends on the situation.
When you did go into a locker room with people, or when you're in a group of people, how did you stand out where people wanted to be interviewed by you or have that conversation with you? Was it you had to kind of jump in front of other people, or everybody kind of knew their line and everybody knew that there was a respect issue of other interviewers or other radio shows? Like, how do you get out in front and land the person that you want to talk to?
Well, sometimes it's just patience. You just got to wait for the crowd to clear. Look, I'll give you an example. Like, you walk into a Seahawks locker room, got a bunch of lockers to the left, got a bunch of lockers to the right. You have a pretty good idea of who most of the media is going to want to talk to based on what happened in that game.
Sure.
Right? So let's go back to the glory days. If Doug Baldwin got a couple of touchdowns, and he's a great interview to begin with, there's going to be a lot of people around Doug. How quickly do I need to get to Doug? Do I have a deadline on getting my audio to a certain place? Can I wait for that initial crowd to clear? You don't want to lose them. Sometimes guys will get in, they'll get dressed, and they'll get out because they want to get to dinner with family and friends more than they want to talk to you. So it's just, I think the experience of going in time after time after time, you get a feel for where you need to go. I always tried to find maybe a guy or a gal who maybe wasn't the star of the game, but really always had interesting insights or things to say, who could help tell the story.
The assist or the...
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So you just got to read the room, see what's happening, who's available. Now, in terms of, do they want to talk to me, or would they take time to talk with me? Again, I hope some of that, if they did, was built up over time of being credible to them, and that I wasn't just someone who dropped in only when they're winning, right? Oh,
yeah,
he's here because it's a playoff game and we're winning.
Yeah.
But someone who respected them in the process, didn't try to embarrass them, wasn't there to try to make news about themselves. I think that can be a problem in this social media world that we're in now, that people want to create controversy because controversy creates chatter, creates attention. And so much about today is about attention, good or bad, or controversy, because that's great because I'm getting clicks and people are liking me and they're talking about me. And, it's a different time. It's a different time.
Well, and I think it's like you got to pick a side. You got to choose one way or the other. You have to say something controversial in order for it to go viral and beat the algorithms. It's like, oh my gosh, whatever happened to be being authentic and just having that relationship with that person. Yeah. And I think that's you did that over and over for a 40+ year career, number one. And number two, you keep talking about team. And I love that because you had mentioned, like, no one, when you see the interview or you see a show go, you don't see the backstory of everything. You don't know who's involved. You don't know how much prep. It doesn't look, the pre taping doesn't look anything like it. You had mentioned that. And you said that it was because of the team. And I think that's in life as well, because when I see let's say Russell Wilson, I think, oh, he's just a gifted quarterback who is lucky and he won this and did that. But you don't know how much work he had to go through, how many contracts he had to sign, how many times he had to say no to something. Was he going to go baseball? Was he going to go football? And you don't know the story and the journey that he's gone along. And sometimes well, obviously, it is not that person only. It's an entire team that helped him get there.
Great point.
And you've given a major shout out to everyone in your life who has helped you get to where you are.
100%.
And so what is something that you would tell a younger person besides saying like it is market, because you did kind of hit on this. So you said the market's smaller, the salaries are lower, there's not as many jobs available. But if you were to tell someone or someone in our audience, based off of all the experience you've had in this 40 plus year career with sports and with announcing and communication, what would be the one nugget that you would want everybody to take away, whether that's living in the moment or something else?
Be true to yourself. I'll tell you the biggest mistake I made, and it's very
being on this podcast.
No, second biggest. No, it was when I transitioned from radio to TV at Cairo in the building. Right, they were launching a new format called Out of the Box. It's legendary for its epic failure in format, but that attempt allowed me an opportunity to transition into the TV side. So that was really important to me. Where I failed, just because I didn't have enough experience, I had, because I was relatively new to television, I had a ton of people telling me what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. And because I lacked a certain level of confidence, I was trying to please everybody. So when you're trying to please everybody, you're probably not pleasing anybody to the degree that they want. Tom, you should do it this way. Tom, you need to do it that way. No, don't. No. You want to tone that down. No, don't try to be funny. No, try to keep. So you need, and so instead of just freely going on the air and just saying, no, I'm just going to be myself and see where that is. I mean, I tried to do that, but it was difficult because I had all these voices in my head all the time.
Literally, and
100%.
Prior to it. I mean,
100%.
in your ear.
And I felt like every sentence of every story was getting micro managed, reviewed, critiqued. And it took me a long, long time. And it wasn't in that role at Cairo. It was down the road where I just really felt comfortable in my own skin doing that. So that's what I would say to anybody kind of getting into this business or a podcasting format or streaming or whatever it is. Be yourself, because I think when you are yourself and you're true to yourself and you have success, that's great.
When you feel like it's done because of you, nobody else.
Right. Conversely, if you fail or you don't advance as quickly as you would like, you can't blame other people. It's kind of on you. So you have to look inside, like, what can I do better? But and reach out to people who you do trust, and not too many voices. Find somebody you trust. How can I get better? And use that, because again, I think if you solicit feedback from too many voices and you're hearing different things, it can just really lock you up. Yeah, in my opinion.
Well, like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah. You're just not, that thing we talked about earlier, Blue, about being in the moment. It's hard to be in the moment when you're thinking about how other people are looking at that moment.
Absolutely.
You're in. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I want to hit you with one final question.
Yeah.
And this is kind of more of an opinion question.
Sure.
Because you had tapped into this, and it's about the Kraken.
Yeah.
And you were later in life introduced to hockey, so it was not your first love. How awesome is it that Seattle has an NHL team?
Oh, I think it's great. And I think the community has, embraced the team. I think the team behind the leadership of Todd Lewicki has done a phenomenal job reaching out to the community and bringing in all parts of the community. They really want this thing to grow beyond, the hardcore hockey fan that's been in the area, following the team in Everett or Seattle or the Spokane Chiefs. So they've done a great job with that. The sport, and I tell people this, it's not the best TV sport. It's not. The puck's tiny. It's kind of hard to follow
It is hard.
sometimes. But in person, man, it's so great.
It really is.
The action is nonstop. There's a sensory difference at a hockey game. It's a little cooler, might even be a little chilly. People got their stocking caps on. The guys are crashing into the board. The puck's bouncing off the glass. Blades are cutting on the ice.
And you hear it.
And you hear it and you kind of feel it.
Yeah.
Now, they just need to be better. And I think, they're having a pretty good season so far this year, which is terrific. But they do a great look. They do a phenomenal job with their in-house entertainment beyond the hockey, right? There's no dead time. There's no downtime at a Kraken game, man.
Yeah.
If they're not skating, there's something coming at you.
Yeah.
So not a cheap ticket, but that's how it is in the NHL. No, I'm not sure there are any cheap tickets in major pro sports, anything else. But I think they really, really try hard to give you value for what you spend. So it's great. It's really cool.
We love it. And I was not a hockey fan, and my wife and we try to make it over for games. And I did not know the inner Heidi would come out on these games, but man, she gets into the fights.
That's awesome.
I'm like,
I know.
My God.
But
She's like, kill him.
That's another part of it. When you learn about, there's more to the fighting than fighting. It's kind of in most cases, it's a self-policing.
Yeah.
And so as you get to understand a little bit more about the nuances of the sport, and in particular that part of it, it's really intriguing. Like, guys will know, like, we're dropping the gloves as soon as we start this game because we've got something we have to deal with. So let's get it out of the way. And then let's play. Yeah, so there's kind of a cool part of it,
Oh, well, I will date myself, and Slapshot was one of my favorite movies.
Oh, God, it's one of the great. It's one of the all-time greats.
Well,
one of the all-time greats.
But it is also, what's really neat is that we were not hockey fans to begin with, but we have come on board.
Yeah.
And as a result, we're Chiefs fans here in Spokane.
Yeah.
And it's like just to be able to see a minor league team at a way cheaper financial decision. And it's just so much fun. And so are the Spokane Indians are great too, just to watch for baseball. So.
I went to one of their games this summer, which was really cool when we were in town. I mentioned I grew up in Tacoma. I live in the Issaquah area now. I've been to T-Mobile Park hundreds of times.
Sure.
Love going there. At this point, if I'm just going as a fan, I love to go down to Cheney Stadium in Tacoma, park my car for $10, easy to get in. There's no bad seat in the house. You got a little bit of a view of Mount Rainier. Concessions are great. Fairly priced. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that's one of the benefits to moving to a smaller community too. Like
for sure.
And Spokane offers so much.
Yeah.
And I love it. And so I love that the Kraken are there. I would love to be able to go to more games.
I have to tell you before you wrap it up, one of my favorite experiences as a broadcaster is, for the past, 10 years or so, maybe once or twice a season, I get a call to do a Gonzaga game. And sometimes they're on the road, Gonzaga men's basketball. Sometimes they're on the road, but sometimes they're over at McCarthy Athletic Center. Kennel. And our broadcast position is right in front of that student section. And when they start jumping and they start bouncing and the energy in that place just goes bonkers. It's great. I love it. And then you're getting ready to do your open. They're jumping, they're screaming. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. So that's another thing that Gonzaga basketball experience and the program that Mark Few has built, that's a real gift for Spokane. That's awesome.
Well, and Spokane offers so much. A lot of people forget that. And I mean, we have so many, Mark Rippon, Ryan Sandberg, John Stockton. Like, we have this great athletic community. And it's just awesome that we all come together and we can be a part of that. And you're right. It's very similar to going to a soccer game in Europe. It's like the fans just get behind it so much different than like a college or a high school group. It's like you do see the fans uproar come up, and it's just like that's the intensity of a fan.
Well, to me, it's really one of the beautiful things about sports. There's so many things dividing us, as we know, nationally, locally, globally, but nobody cares about that when they come together to cheer for their team. Nobody's talking about that stuff. They want the Hawks to win. Are you a 12? Doesn't matter if you're a D12 or an R12, you're just a 12, right?
Yeah.
You're a Gonzaga fan, or you're a Cougar fan, or you're an Eastern fan. Like, that's all that matters in the moments of when those things are taking place. And I've always loved the passion of sports, the loyalty of a fan base. At least when they're winning, they're very loyal.
Yeah.
They're losing, maybe not as loyal. But anyway, I've been really fortunate to see a lot of great games, great people, great athletes, and great fans.
Well, and I love what you're doing because you are that trusted voice for so many people. And you've been a mentor to me in the speaking business and looking up to you. And just, I mean, I'm getting so many nuggets, just even our conversations that we've had over the phone. Did you ever go to Piccolo's over in Liberty Lake?
I did.
The pizza? And what was your 6-7 take on that?
It was outstanding. I skipped a dinner so I could go over there.
Yeah.
And I was like, little tiny place, right?
Yep.
Not big. I got my pizza to go, and I was 10 minutes back to the hotel. I was just that loser sitting in his hotel room eating pizza by himself, but it was a great pizza.
Oh my God, I love it. That was a plug
pizza
for Piccolo's in Liberty Lake. Absolutely. They have a happy hour that's amazing. My wife and I love that. You and I could talk for hours and hours. I want to know what you're up to now and how people can find out more about you and follow you.
Yeah. So look, my broadcast stuff when it's there is, games are nights and weekends, right? So daytimes I'm pretty open. A year and a half ago, I got a call from a company called Aristopoint, under the umbrella of that company, which is Kirkland based, also with an office in Spokane Valley, is a company called CEO to CEO. CEO to CEO puts on monthly presentations with a focus on a speaker or panel to local business owners and leaders. We do that in Spokane. We do it in Bellevue, again, once a month. You were one of our speakers, as you referred to, both sides of the state. Phenomenal job. Thank you for that. Gave away Blue's book as well, so that was cool. People loved that. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm, in terms of that, I'm just, we try to identify speakers, themes, timing, and there's just a bunch of really boring work that I got to do in terms of computer stuff nobody wants to hear about. But it's, the challenge of that whole thing is, when you've done one thing for so long and then, let's try something completely different at 64 at the time. Like, what am I thinking?
Well, you're being versatile.
Oh, I'm being versatile.
Yes.
And it was different. It was different because, my environment for work is a stadium or a studio, and this environment is a cubicle, and it's there's a lot of terrific people there, but it's a very different environment. So for me, that was an adjustment. So I had to make sure I wasn't being too loud, bombastic, walking in. What's up, everybody? The Hawks play tonight. Let's go. I just, you sort of adjust and know when the right time is for things like that. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. And
you're heavily on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah, I'm not huge on social media, but I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to find speakers for events, we have CascadeSpeakers.com. People can go there and find speakers, or they just give you a call and make it easy. But so that's the deal.
Well, and I would say that for any businesses and for executives, the CEO to CEO really does put on a great networking event, and it's like the ability for people to connect at those meetings and those breakfasts are phenomenal for networking. And so I would advise people to do that all the time. And then the talent that you bring in is awesome. Like every single speaker there has so many nuggets to take away. And if you're a local business, it's just so beneficial for you to be able to be present and listen and hear those things.
I appreciate you saying that. I think hopefully we want that. We hope and we believe all of our speakers will deliver. Some people are always going to like a topic or a speaker better than others. It's a subjective thing. But universally, what they really enjoy, to your point, and I'm glad you brought it up, is the time before the speaker, that time during breakfast, where it's just conversation, and then after the speaker. So there's these really great opportunities to meet people, have really fun conversations,
and
collaborate. So it's cool. It's nice to see things that are really positive kind of come organically out of those meetings. That's neat.
Well, and that's you being organic behind the camera and behind the mic. And that is something that you've done, and you've become that trusted face and that trusted voice in so many people's living rooms. And thank you very much for being a part of my life and being a mentor to me.
Same to you,
and thanks
man.
for coming on the Blue Stiley Podcast.
I love it. It's been great meeting you and getting to know you over the last year or so. So again, that's one of the real benefits of what I'm doing now in this role is really meeting some outstanding people. You're one of those people.
Well, apparently I'm taking you to Piccolo's. So you don't have to eat it.
Now I'm going to get a large. Last time I got a small. This time I'll go large.
Don't do it. Well, thank you so much
Blue.
for coming.
Thanks for having
Thomas.
me, man.
All right. If this episode brings you value or you know someone who could benefit from it, the best way to support the show is by sharing and subscribing. It's completely free and helps us reach more people. And if you have any questions, feedback, or guests you'd like me to interview, drop a comment while you're there. I'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, thank you for tuning in. And let's continue sharing optimism and positivity.